Yo, yo, what is going on? That was really awkward. Way to start the podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here. I'm back. It's another week. It's another beautiful week. I hope it's good for you. I hope you're staying safe. I hope you're staying healthy. I hope you're, just doing what you need to do to survive. Kid Brian is a producer. He's a TikTok comedian. And he's just an all-around content creator, Him and Justin are working on some stuff. And so Justin was like, hey, you should have this kid on the podcast. I was like, yeah, for sure. I will. I definitely will. And I did. And it went way smoother than I expected. I've never talked to this kid in my life, except for Instagram DMs. And it was really, pretty natural, pretty good. If you're interested in creating any sort of content, we don't really talk about even production that much. We don't really go into the music into really depth. It's more of like a general him just trying to make it in the industry of creating stuff. So if you're interested in that, this is a great podcast, as all of mine are. They're all good. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. Without any further ado, it is Kid Brian, Broc, Gardner vs. the world. Let's go. You're starting your own podcast then?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna name it Out of Tune, just because it's kind of musicy and kind of sarcastic. I'm starting my own podcast. I think I'm gonna do an episode like every 2 weeks or so. I've already got a bunch of great guests lined up. I have do you know who Kyle Huber is?
I don't.
He runs something called the Adventure Creator Podcast, which is really blowing up right now. He had a long time ago a guest on it who was a famous music producer. His name is Diamond Pistols. Does a lot of stuff with Rich Brian, Lil Pump, etc. And he had him on the podcast. I remember I was listening to that, and he was talking about how he dropped out of college. No, he got kicked out of college because he shipped himself a package of weed 4 weeks before graduation, and he was like forced to kind of figure out ways to live without a degree.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of brought him to where he is now, making money. And like every week he's in a new city. It's crazy to watch his Instagram. But I hit him up when I dropped out of college because I was like, I'm kind of in the same boat. Like, do you have any advice for me? And we just started talking. And so what we're going to do is I'm actually getting on the podcast that Diamond Pistols was on. And we're doing a part 1. And then in a year from now, we're going to do a part 2 and kind of just compare and contrast. Yeah. So I've got a lot of podcasts lined up. And I think I'm going to try to get him on mine as a guest. So I'm super excited for sure.
Yeah, that's crazy. So yours is going to be like a music centric podcast. Just like, are you going to just interview different musical people, or how's that going to go?
So I guess what I don't want it to be is just for music. I don't like it when my content is specific to music producers, even though it's kind of how it's ending up.
Yeah.
So I think for the podcast, I'm going to try to just make it so that anyone who listens can take something away from it. My first guest is the person you recently had, Justin Jarzonbeck.
Yeah.
And then I'm just going to try to just get anyone who has like a story to tell, or anyone who has something to say, something interesting to talk about for an hour. So not like just random friends of mine, just like people who have something,
Yeah, that's what I'm kind of trying to do right now too. I'm just trying to line up. Like, TikTok has been a godsend because I've just found so many like smaller creators, like so many, and I'll just find the smaller creator. They're always on my For You page. There's always a new person that's trying to make something, like a clothing brand or like music or something. So I'll just hit them up. I'll be like, hey, you want to come on my podcast? They're like, yeah, for sure. So I got tons of people lined up. So that's where social media is just a beautiful thing. If you're trying to start like a podcast like this, it's crazy. But
yeah, for sure.
Go ahead. Sorry. We got a little bit of a lag here.
I actually started cracking down on TikTok, I think a month ago, and it's been absolutely insane. I did not expect what that app can provide. I started off by just doing like producer comedy videos, and I think in a few of them, I had like snippets of my own beats playing as part of the joke. And like 3 of them went like super viral. And so people were going from my TikTok over to my Instagram trying to buy the beats off of me. So I started making like crazy money just from people coming from TikTok over to Instagram. So it was like super unexpected, but like it's been a blessing. Like half my audience has come straight from TikTok. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's crazy. Your TikTok is so funny because it's so like niche. Like it's like comedy TikToks for music producers, but they do very well. So it's just kind of funny that I would never think of that as like it's just such a niche thing for TikTok, but it works. So
there's a whole audience out there that I'm trying to crack at.
Yeah, that's crazy. So let's just go back to the basics here real quick because we've gotten a little off course. We never even really officially started. This is Kid Brian. Kid Brian, say hello.
Hello.
Kid Brian, I got hooked up with Kid Brian from Justin Jarzambek, who we had a couple weeks ago, because you guys are working on some music together. So let's start there, actually. So how did you meet Justin, and then what are you guys kind of working on right now, just so we can get that out of the way real fast?
Yeah. So basically, my whole philosophy on networking has just been find people that are about my size or bigger, and then try to reach out to them and find ways I can connect. And Justin was one of the first people I ended up reaching out to. I've been following Tiny Meat Gang for a long time, and I thought it would be very cool to try to do something like that with Justin. And so I hit him up on Instagram, was like, yo, if you want to try out this comedy rap thing, you could totally pull it off. We should give it a shot. And so we started talking, and we started like sending ideas back and forth. And so right now what we're working on is some comedy rap songs. And the first one was a little rough, but that's how all music projects are. The first songs are usually a little tough. And I mean, he's never recorded before. He's never worked on music before. So it's kind of just been easing him into the process of how it all works. But it's coming along, and we've been learning a ton. So far, I think we're going to have something out by the end of February. I'm pretty excited for it. I think we're going to try to do a video with it too. So
sweet. Yeah. So that's funny that you mentioned, because you mentioned Diamond Pistols before, and he does all the Tiny Meat Gang producing, right? So that's
for sure. He's definitely been a huge inspiration of mine. I actually started making music because I found Walkman by TMG, and then I ended up like looking up the producer and just diving into all of his music and just falling in love with it. And that's how I ended up starting.
So when did Walkman come out? That was like last summer, right? Like summer 2019?
Summer before that, I think.
2018? So you've been doing it for...
Yeah, it might have been. Or before that, yeah.
Yeah, so you've been doing it for
a little over a year now.
Gotcha. So that's how you just saw Walkman?
A little over a year now.
You just saw Walkman?
Yeah,
and just decided to go into it.
I was on YouTube. I was in South Carolina on vacation with my family, and it was like ungodly hot outside, and so we were forced inside. And I found Cody Ko, and I started just binging his videos.
Yeah.
And then after I binged all of his videos, he dropped Walkman, and I just thought the beat was so sick. I was like, who made this? And I found Diamond Pistols, and that was kind of what started. I immediately got home after vacation and just made the most garbage beat I've ever made in my life, and was like, this is it. This is my break right here.
So the beats you're making right now, at least the ones that are on Spotify that I've been listening to, are like they're very like EDM. Like I also saw you posted about Skrillex. That's who I would relate it to. It's like a kind of a dubsteppy. So was it always like that? Because if you were listening to Tiny Meat Gang, then did it progress from like those types of beats to more of like an EDM type?
Actually, it's really funny. So basically, I didn't start making music when I heard Walkman. I'd already been making music. I wasn't taking it seriously until I heard Walkman.
Gotcha.
Basically, my freshman year of high school, I was all like super sad and stuff, like a freshman would be, right? And so I found, lo-fi hip hop beats to like relax.
Oh yeah.
To. You know that live stream?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So I heard that and was like, I have to make this. And so I downloaded the software and started making lo-fi beats, but I wasn't very good at it and I wasn't serious about it. So I'd do it for like a week and then drop it for 3 months. And I kind of did that all the way up until I heard Walkman. But it started with lo-fi, and then it went into trying to make rap beats. And then I think I found Diamond Pistols and found out about how all of his EDM stuff. And he taught me a lot about, not him, but like listening to his music taught me a lot about the value of versatility, meaning like if you know EDM, then you're going to be really good at making rap beats. And so I figured if I can tackle EDM and get really good at that, then I'll be good at anything. And so I started entering competitions. and it kind of just pushed me forward as far as my production went. And I started entering EDM competitions, and then from there I just started falling in love with it. Which is funny because most people think I just had like a dubstep phase that never ended.
Yeah,
which is not true. I was really late to the EDM scene. Most people are huge into EDM when they're really young. I started listening to EDM only this year, so it's crazy how that worked.
Gotcha. So you entered into EDM contests. What does that entail? How does that all work?
Yeah, so basically there's a big company called Cymatics, and they give away sounds for producers to use in their songs. And every once in a while, they host these big competitions where you're supposed to take some of their sounds and make a beat and then put it out there, and whoever is the best one wins. And so I would enter those. I would make the most garbage thing ever and be like, this is it. This is the winner right here. And then what that would do was force me to make the best thing I could make. And so that's what really helped get me up to speed as far as production goes. But a lot of them were EDM based. And so that's how I ended up starting like with EDM, was just through those contests.
So where do you find like the sounds that you use? Because I think obviously I feel like some producers might be listening to this, or aspiring producers. Where do you go to find certain sounds, or like inspiration, I guess even?
So there's a few places. So right now there's this big platform called Splice, which is basically a monthly subscription you pay to an unlimited database of just sounds like drums, synths, anything you could imagine, and it's just subscription based for these sounds. And that's where I've been going a lot. But it's funny because there's a lot of stigma around it, because it's almost the lazy way to get sounds. So it's kind of the thing people do secretly and don't really talk about a lot, but it should be talked about more for sure. I go there and I'll just click through just random sounds until I hear something that's like very cool. And even then I might not use the sound that I hear. I might just take inspiration from it and bring that to one of my projects. Another way is just by buying sample packs online, which are just, you pay $40 for a set amount of sounds, and then you just have it in your sample library. So those are the two main places. And then something I've been tackling a lot more is what's called sound design, where you have a digital synth and you just twist a bunch of knobs until you get a sound that sounds good. And it's definitely the hardest thing to do, but getting good at that means getting good at anything. So that's what I've been focusing on for sure. I've been trying to implement that into my tracks, and it's definitely helped with more than just sound design. So it's been beneficial.
Gotcha. Yeah. So yeah, freaking, I don't know. I've tried to make beats. I produce a lot of stuff. Like I have Ableton and stuff. First of all, what do you use? What's your DAW?
FL Studio. It's the only thing I've ever used, but I wish I was on Ableton.
That's what everybody says. I don't understand. What's like the difference between them? Everybody says they choose Ableton over FL. Basically, if you're just making beats, FL Studio is usually the way to go because it's pretty simple. But Ableton is a lot more complicated, and with that, it means it's a better platform for more complicated producers. Yeah. So as I've gotten better, I've started to realize that there's more capability within Ableton. There's the same capability platform to platform, but it's almost just workflow wise easier in Ableton, and that's pretty much the only difference. Yeah, that's
so it's really not that big a deal that I'm using FL, but it's just like I wish I had started on Ableton instead of having to switch in the future, but it is what it is.
Yeah. So have you been, like, I see you have a piano in your room. Have you been musically like your whole life? Is that always been a thing, or is it just when you started making beats? Like, do you play instruments or just, utilize the DAW?
I was in band in elementary school and middle school, and I hated it so much. I wouldn't have said I was musically inclined at the time. And then I got a lot more into it in high school, but not like the band, more like the music itself. I was just really into playing and just learning about how that worked. And I wouldn't say that's obviously not what got me into production, but going into production with the knowledge of how to play just general instruments and knowing basic music theory, I didn't have to try to tackle that, because most people start making beats and then they have to learn how a piano works and how the notes work. I didn't have to learn that. I already knew it. So that was super helpful. But more and more nowadays, I start to realize that although there's a ton of technical aspects of production, that's not really the important part. The important part is knowing how to play guitar and using that in my tracks, and knowing how to play piano, and knowing how actual drums work.
Yeah.
And so I've been just tackling drums, bass, guitar, piano, all of like the root instruments, because if you know how to play those, production and songwriting itself is way easier.
Yeah, that's like when I started making beats. I started making beats like a year ago, maybe, and I've never played I played trumpet when I was in like 6th grade, but that was just because we had to. So I like didn't know anything about music theory, anything like that, and I still don't know that much. I'm going all. I only know how to use Ableton, like like drawing in keys and stuff.
Yeah.
That's all I can do. And I wish I knew music theory. I've tried to study it a lot and I'm getting better, but I wish I had that knowledge going in, like you said.
Now that I think of it, I think it's definitely one of the hardest parts of tackling music production. And I didn't really realize that because I was already pretty good at it. But looking back, I'm seeing how young producers are genuinely struggling with it. And it's just something I never had to grasp or struggle with like they did. But I'm starting to realize that it is actually way harder than I remember it being. And it's very different from a technical side. It's deeper. It's more creative. It's hard to explain, but it definitely is really complicated.
Yeah. So who are like some of your biggest inspirations? We talked about Diamond Pistols, but I'm wondering, is there anything else, like any other person inspiration wise for your producing?
Yeah, for sure. I feel like I can point to certain artists for certain reasons. I can't just say like, oh, this person is my inspiration.
Yeah.
There's always a reason for it. And there's a few people and it's constantly fluctuating. It's usually based on who I'm listening to a lot of. For example, last year when I was first like getting into music, I had this huge Rich Brian phase. Do you know who he is?
I do. Yeah.
He's with 88 Rising. He's a rapper. I was huge into him because I think of just his story was really interesting. And I just felt like he was really versatile. He could sing, he could rap, he could do everything. That was definitely like 2019. That was before I got into EDM. But then when I got into EDM, I think the first person to really take over was the stereotypical Skrillex. But the reason for that is not just because he's Skrillex, but because if you look at his project, he's just constantly evolving. Like no project he releases is like the previous one. And I'm glad that I figured that out now, because later it's really bad if you look back on your project and just see the same stuff over and over again. And he's just taught me about the value of changing things up over time and how every project you release needs to be different from the previous one in order to have longevity. And so I've been thinking a lot about that going into my project. And then I would say he's also taught me a lot about a performance element. That's not something I'm doing a lot of now, but I know in the future I'm going to be doing live shows. And he just made a really good point once talking about you can't just be a producer. You have to come out and be a performer at some point.
Yeah.
Because that's what like really connects with an audience. It's not just the music, but actually being there. That's really important too. And then I'd say my second big inspiration is a guy named Getter. Do you know who he is?
I don't. I've never heard of him.
So basically, he in 2016 was huge on Vine. Do you remember the Dude Vine?
Yeah.
Dude.
I remember that was a whole like general thing.
That was Nick Coletti and Getter. And around that time, that really blew him up. Vine is what made him pop off. And it's really cool to just see the similarity between Vine and TikTok and how that's all been working out. But that's a whole different conversation. So Getter popped off on Vine, and then he signed to Skrillex's label called Ausla. And he released the craziest EP bass music has ever heard. It's insane. But then he waited a really, really long time to drop another album, and everyone was complaining about it. When he dropped it, it was nothing like the previous one. And it's almost like he not only did he change his sound, but he changed his personality too. And so what I think he demonstrates is a really good idea of an artist project. When I listen to his music, I'm not just like hearing the music, but you kind of hear the presentation of the artist at the same time. It's like when you listen to Travis Scott, you can kind of just visualize him, his vibe, his performance in your head. And I think that's really important. Just like Billie Eilish. Like when you listen to her music, you think of Billie Eilish and how she portrays her music and her visuals. And so I guess what he's taught me is like personality and visual really matters in order to make music good and connect with listeners. It's not just about how it sounds, you know? So I'd say Skrillex and Getter right now for EDM, but I feel like nowadays I'm listening to less and less EDM just because I don't want to start making what everyone else is. I find myself listening to a lot of like classic rock, rap, just other genres to try to stay versatile. And so I guess, Skrillex, Getter, and I can't really point to any other genres right now, but I probably will in like a month.
I got you. So what do you think, like 2021, what do you have in store? What do you, besides like the Justin stuff, because that's, that's probably like a side thing. What do you focus on right now for this year?
So I would say the way I look at my time is that 2020 was a year of preparation. It was kind of just figuring out how the industry worked, figuring out how I was going to, make it, so to speak, how I was going to turn it into a business, thinking a lot about what I would have to sacrifice in order to make it happen, because, you have to sacrifice something in order to make it happen.
Yeah.
And I feel like I figured all of that out in 2020. I figured out the direction I wanted to go with my music. And I feel like 2021 is more of just a year of execution, and less preparing. I've kind of figured everything else out. It's time to just do it and get it over with. Meaning I'm really going to crack down on the content. I don't think it's perfect. I'm not necessarily proud of anything I put out in 2020, but it was important for me to thrive on it in 2021. If you know what I'm saying, it was like a foundation.
Yeah.
And same with my music. I'm not necessarily proud of anything I put out last year, but it's an important step for what I'm going to put out this year. And so this year, there's going to be a lot of music. I think a track every month. It's not all going to be EDM. I have some cool things lined up. And then just the content, podcast, and hopefully by the end of the year, I'll have either YouTube or Twitch or something else that I can, branch out with. But 2021, just pure execution on everything.
Yeah. So you mentioned a couple things there that I want to get into. First of all, you talked about like last year, you were trying to figure out like how the business works and how all the behind the scenes stuff works. And you weren't really putting out as much content as you are going to be this year. And I just think about a lot of people that I'm seeing, like trying to make it in whatever it is, podcasting, YouTube, like film. A lot of it is film and like music. They'll just be saying they're trying to figure it out. And they're like, I'm trying to become this. And they have not put out anything. Like you can't find any content from them. They're just like, I'm trying to make it as a producer. You've never heard of one of their beats. They don't like put stuff out.
Exactly.
And it's like one of the crucial part is to make it, you gotta like actually do the thing. You know what I mean? So it's kind of a very important thing.
Basically.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So here's the tough part. In order to get to the point where your content is amazing and your music is amazing and you're really genuinely proud of what you're putting out, you have to pass through a phase where you're putting out just stupid, bad, not funny, not good, bad music, just crappy stuff.
And that's where I'm at right now.
Because there's going to be people are going to look at that and they're going to judge you. And so people think about their friends, they think about other people's reactions, and they're afraid of doing it. And that's obviously where I was for a while. Earlier in 2020, I was trying to sell beats and I failed miserably, but it was great because I learned so much about marketing in the process and about putting out content and just getting over other people's opinions of me. Because my friends would just laugh at me. Like my efforts were sad. It didn't look good. I wasn't making any money. But in my failure, I learned how to deal with people's opinions. And so getting over that, I think, is the most important part. Because once you're not afraid of people judging you, then you have time to actually focus on it and not worry about the unnecessary stuff and actually worry about the things that are going to make your content, your music, and everything better. So despite all the crap I put out in 2020, I'm now prepared for everything I'm going to have in 2021. So it's a hump that people have to get over, and it's really mental. It's really hard. It's not easy. It's honestly, I swear, the mental part of all of this is the most difficult thing. Because the only person standing in my way with my content is myself. Yeah. My friends can't keep me from putting out content, but I can, So it's just people getting out of their own way. That's the hardest part at the end of the day. Yeah. A lot of people are way too worried about putting out good content before they've ever put out any content. And it's like, that's never how it worked. Nobody's ever started something, no matter what it is. It doesn't even have to be like a creative thing. Nobody's ever walked out onto a basketball court and just been LeBron James. LeBron James didn't just walk out and become the best basketball player ever. It's just not how it works with literally everything in life. When you were walking, for sure. When you started to walk as a child,
You fell down a couple times. You didn't just get up and start walking, you know? And a lot of people don't understand that. They think this is kind of a different thing. And I guess it's because you don't really see a lot of people's failures, I guess, because you kind of find people when they're bigger and like actually know what they're doing. So you see you see other people's right now and you compare it to your right now, and it just doesn't match up. So people get a little scared and they don't want to put anything out until they think it's God tier. You know what I'm saying?
For sure. My favorite example is actually Juice WRLD. If you go to his SoundCloud and scroll to the bottom, it's just garbage. It's just stupid, bad, terrible mixes, terrible production. But that's like the beauty of it. I think one of my biggest regrets so far has been deleting the old music I had on my SoundCloud. Because at the time I was like, I'd get better and then I'd look at my old stuff and think, oh, that's bad. And I'd take it down. But then I started to realize that's always how it's going to be. And if I just embrace that, then it's almost like storytelling. Then someday when I am huge, my fans who aspire to be like me are going to go on my SoundCloud. They're going to scroll to the bottom and think, wow, he was making bad music once too. And it's going to justify their bad music. And so just realizing that and realizing that I'm telling a story, not just putting out bad stuff, it's more valuable and it's meaningful that way. And it prevents me from taking stuff down, you know?
So there's, I guess, if we look at my world, there's a podcaster named Tim Dillon. I don't know if you know who Tim Dillon is. Comedian, podcast host. He's my favorite podcaster, like biggest inspiration probably right now. But I'm subscribed to his Patreon. He's the only person I'm subscribed to their Patreon. And he has his archives of every single episode since he started his podcast. And there's like 200, 300 episodes. So I've listened to every single of his archives. And when you listen back and you hear what he's talking about when he's like first starting his podcast and it's not taking off at all. And he's in the exact same spot as me. And then you see the progression to where he is right now, where he's really like, he's been on Rogan 8 times. He's like doing cool things now. And you kind of have to see where people start, and it just kind of motivates you. Like you said, it's very inspiring to know that I'm not alone and I can still do this, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's great to see famous people's shitty stuff because it's like, it's beautiful in a sense, you know? Like look at the first Rogan podcast. Have you ever seen that?
I've seen some of the older ones. I haven't seen the very first one, but I've seen some of the older ones. The very first
one is so funny. It's so funny.
I'm going to have to try and find it.
It's terrible quality.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. It's so funny.
And then you just look 1,000 some odd episodes later, it's the biggest podcast. It's the most influential. He's the most influential guy in the world probably right now.
Yeah, for sure. Ooh. Yeah, maybe.
Who do you put above Rogan? Let's get this.
Who do I put above Rogan? As far as influence goes,
just influential.
Probably the top political candidates I would put over Rogan.
Really? Like Trump, Biden?
There's people who don't know who Rogan is, but there's people who do know who Trump and Biden are.
You're right.
So it's like maybe them.
But it's just interesting to see how like his podcast has gone from, like you said, it was like terrible quality, and now it's like people were like genuinely, it almost happened where he like moderated the presidential election. Like that was almost a thing. He almost influenced the outcome of the election. So that's all I meant by that. Like, it's just crazy to see how far he's come. And it's been 1,500 episodes later. That's insane. But yeah, so that's just kind of crazy. And then, so one of the other things that you mentioned was like, so you were trying to figure out the business side of it and how to actually make it, which I feel like I don't cover well enough when I talk to people like this. Like, what are you doing to push yourself to the next level? Because I know what I'm doing, but I'm curious as to like what other creators are doing to like kind of push themselves to make it to where they're trying to be. So what have you done? Like, I like specifics. Like, what are you working on and doing?
Yep. So I'll actually tell you about the past before I tell you about now. So basically, the reason I know a ton about it and the reason I was confident with pursuing this like full on was because I spent so long not knowing anything about it and having to tackle it when I was trying to sell beats. I failed at everything, but in the process, I watched so many marketing videos, so many videos from big influencers who have made it, who talk about how they did it. People hate on Russ all the time. He had it down. He knew what he was doing. He did a song every week, and that's how it works. And so just failing a lot in the past really is the thing that taught me a lot of my business lessons. But I think right now, what differentiates me from a lot of other people is just the use of content, putting out content. And people go so wrong with it because they overthink it so much. the way I look at it is I just look at my traits and how I can turn that into something that's musical and entertaining to watch. And so what that comes down to is humor and music. So how can I combine that? And it's great because no one else does that. You have to find a niche that no one else occupies. And the producer humor niche is so garbage right now, and I'm trying to fix that, but we'll see. But it's the mass amounts of content. I post way too much on Instagram, but it's so necessary.
You post
because it's
so
building
much.
My fan base.
I
post every other night on Instagram, but I mean, my top video has like over 2,000 views. On average, I get over 500. It's just been working, and it's the consistency that's been building me. And same on TikTok. I post every night on TikTok, but it pays off. It's insane. It's the content, and then this isn't talked about a lot, but I feel like the mindset is also extremely important. The fact that I just like, I think I have a level of blind arrogance that's almost necessary.
Yeah.
Because I feel like if I wasn't somewhat blindly arrogant, I'd question myself all the time. But I have it ingrained in my brain that if I spend 4 years on this, like put all my time into it, I have to get something from it, you know?
Yeah.
And so I feel like there's a level of blind arrogance that needs to be there as well. And then I think too many people try to dump money into ads. I think that's one of the other things. People think marketing is just putting money into ads, and at the end of the day, if I made an ad and I put $30 into it and promoted it, it would not get as much engagement than one of my stupid producer memes.
Yeah,
and that's just the reality of it.
Yeah,
my organic posts over time do better than just dumping money into something, and it's something you grow as well, you know. So I think the third thing I'd say would be people's mentality that they have to reach out to big names in order to get heard. Like, for example, producers make a track and then they send it to a big record label along with thousands of other people trying to get their stuff heard. It just doesn't work. But that's how, oh my gosh, I could go totally into this. Hold on. Okay, so
go into it, man.
People try to get their stuff heard. People try to get their stuff heard by sending it to big people. But the idea is to get big people to come to you, right? And that's my philosophy. If I can just build everything myself, people are going to start DMing me, you know? That's how it works. And so just the idea that Skrillex is going to call me, not me sending stuff to Skrillex, that's how that works. And that's how it is going to work. And instead of going from 1 to 100 and having no audience below you, I'd rather build myself so that if I do get rejected from labels, or I fall off from a label, I still have everything I've built underneath me. And so it's almost more valuable to not send your stuff to labels and not try to go from 1 to 100 in a day. It's I think there's a common phrase. It's a marathon, not a race. And so just trying to rush to the top is the worst thing ever. In fact, Russ was talking about this. He was like, when I was younger, I always wanted to make it tomorrow. But then when he did make it, he looked back and was like, I'm so happy I didn't make it back then. I'm so happy it happened now and not back then. And so it's just that, and understanding my future self is going to be happy that I make it in the future and not now, and just being really patient about it. And I don't remember what I was going to add to that earlier when I got all excited.
No, that's all right. No, that was a really like interesting point of not going from 1 to 100. Because it's like, if you say you make this track and you send it to some record label and they love it and it blows up, then what? Then what happens? You get some money, and then what?
Then I get, that's basically it. I get money off the song that does very well. It gets promoted by the label, but then after that song, there's no guarantee they're going to take my next one.
No, yeah.
And so then there's nothing. It's like a viral TikTok.
Exactly.
It's like everybody hypes up the idea of a viral TikTok. You get a viral TikTok, I'll tell you right now, it goes right back to normal the next day.
No, 100%.
Same amount of views, same amount of everything.
The key is
so same with a big record.
Yeah, the key I think Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, the key is like, I've always thought like everybody says this, it just takes one video, it just takes one podcast, it just takes one song. That's not even close to true. Everybody tells me that too. No. Like old people when I'm talking to like older people, when I'm talking to them about my podcast, they're like, hey, it just takes one video. All you got to do is make a little TikTok that blows up and you're set. It's not really. It takes a bunch. If you blow up a bunch of times. So if I see somebody on my For You page and I'm like, oh, that's a funny TikTok, I scroll past. And I kind of talked about this with Justin. if I see another funny TikTok by them, I'll be like, oh, that's the guy that made that other TikTok, but I still might scroll past again. And then if I see it a third time, like another funny one, I'll be like, okay, this guy, like the past 3 that I've seen are funny. I'm going to follow him. And that's how that works. It's not just one. It's never one. It might be 10.
For sure. Yeah. In fact, there's this weird analogy, and I hate using analogies because they're cringy and cliche, but basically, if you took 2 giant groups of artists and told one of them to make the best pot they possibly can, we're talking about sculptors or like the people who do pottery, whatever that means. So if you told a group of them to make the best pot they could, and then you told the other group to just make as many pots as they could, the people who made as many pots as they could would end up with a better pot than the people who stared at one for a month trying to make it the best they could. And so it's just the repetition. That's another thing. It's just mass amounts of whatever you're putting out is crucial. You can't just put out one great video that you love and say, I'll post again in a month. You have to just, I think Gary Vee always talks about.
I was going to bring up Gary Vee. I was genuinely going to bring up that exact thing. I saw it the other day. He said quantity over quality.
Exactly.
Which is interesting. I don't see, I mean, it's a little bit of both, obviously, but it is crazy. People just think one thing is going to get them there, and it's just not how it works. So if you're like a creator listening right now, that's just not how it works. I wish it was. I really wish it was. That would make my life a whole lot easier.
It's not an answer people like. It's I don't know. I didn't anticipate the amount of content I'd have to be putting out, but here I am, and I get it now. So
yeah, and I think it just takes time. Like a lot of people, I don't know. A lot of people just think you just blow up. It's just going to take a lot of time. Like even to blow up, it takes time. You have to have a certain base of people that are going to watch your stuff and promote it to get other people to like watch it and blow it up. You know what I'm saying? So it just takes time. Like,
basically.
Sorry, go ahead. I didn't have anything to say after that. I don't know why I did that.
It's fine. So people forget the idea of value as well. It's one thing to put out a mass amount of content, but if it's just dumb stuff that you just you're posting because you have to post, that's not going to help. You have to approach content as if you're giving someone value without any expectation in return. And what that means is content is not taking a video of your song and saying, go stream my song. No one cares. I hate to say it, but no one cares. No one cares about your song that you took a video of. You have to ease them into it. And that's my thinking. It's like, if I can get people to like my content because I'm funny and it's niche and they can relate to it, then when I do, it's, the concept of, I think it's jab, 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 hook.
Yeah.
You basically provide value, and then ask for something. That's how I look at it. It's like if I can put out a ton of great content and get people to like me, then when I do drop a song, they're going to be like, oh, this guy has music. They're going to already have that relationship with me that I need in order for them to purchase something from me. I'm selling them a digital product, So people forget about value, and people forget about asking or providing value without anything in return. People just always expect stuff, like when I reach out to Justin, I mean, I could have charged him for everything. I made him a YouTube beat. I made him a podcast intro. I could have charged him for all of that, but that's just not what's important. You have to provide value without any expectation of return, because usually it's going to end up being a greater return in the end.
Yeah, especially when you think of it like we're smaller creators, but when you did that beat for his intro for his podcast, people are going to hear that beat for his intro, and he talks about you all the time on his podcast, like he says beat by Kid Brian and stuff. So when people hear that, it's kind of just interesting. I think I talk about it literally every single episode of this podcast when I talk to creators. It's like this kind of community of creators that we're like building right now, like subconsciously. Like we're just talking and stuff. And I found Justin through TikTok. I found you through Justin. I found some other people through you. You may not know that yet, but it's like I'm constantly networking, and we have this community. So it's like, as Justin's podcast grows, then more people are going to find out about you. As like when you guys make that music, like as either any of us blow up, then it's just going to help the other people. So I just like this community that we're trying to build.
Exactly. That's how it works. And Justin knows Trevor Wallace and has not an internship, but he's like Trevor Wallace's assistant now, and who hangs around Young Gravy, who knows TMG. It's like, it's crazy how that works. In fact, that's another thing I want to talk about. the amount of excuses, the amount of crap excuses producers make for not being able to make connections. I live in the middle of nowhere. I live in a place called Milford, New Hampshire. It is like you've never heard of that place. It's so unknown, and that's people's excuse. They live in the middle of nowhere. They don't live in a city. They don't go to a college where there's lots of people to network with. If people just put in the work, it's not hard to send a DM.
It really
It's not hard to find some small but good rapper and say, "Hey, do you want a beat? I'll send you one for free."
Yeah.
Boom. That's a connection.
Yeah, I've sent like 10 DMs
or people
today.
will do that. Send 5 DMs. Yeah, some people will send 5 DMs, get 5 no's, then never send DMs again. That's another thing. I hate that. If I got a no from Justin, I would have been like, all right, next person.
Yeah.
You know? You have to become numb to getting no's.
Yeah, that's another thing people don't realize.
I feel like networking is way easier than people think it is, just because they don't try. If they actually put their best foot forward and give it a shot and send some DMs and invite people on their podcast, you never know.
Hey man, we established this relationship just because I had no idea who you were. Justin was like, I know this kid, he's a producer. I'm like, all right, that's all I need. And so I DM'd you, and now look at us. We're the best of friends. Yeah,
Justin was like, Justin and I were working. He was like, bro, I got you on a podcast. I was like, what?
Yeah.
You got me on a podcast? What on earth?
Yeah. But it's just funny. Like, people just need to understand how to take no for an answer. I've gotten so many no's and just like, not even no's most of the time. Most of the time they don't even respond or open it. And I'm like, I know you saw this. You have 1,000 followers. I know you saw this DM. Ridiculous. But you just got to get numb to it, like you said.
There are some people that like feel so entitled to power even though they don't have it. Here's an example. So basically, I found this artist on TikTok. I'm not going to say his name. I don't want to call him out like this.
Yeah.
But like, he had a pretty cool sound. And so I was like, that would be cool if I sent him some beats and we worked on something together, which is rare. I rarely find rappers that I'm really confident with. But this guy was great and he was popping on TikTok. But I feel like because he was popping on TikTok, he just felt like he was famous and doesn't have to reply to people's DMs. People get their first ounce of fame and then they think they're someone and that they don't have to reply to DMs and they're too important for comments. You know, when I had a viral TikTok, I had 500 comments on one video. I replied or liked to every single one. And as a result, my follower count skyrocketed. Someone would like the video and comment, and they wouldn't follow me until I replied to their comment.
Yeah, which a lot of people need to understand.
And so I sent this guy. Exactly. I sent this guy a beat, and we basically had a conversation that we could have had in 5 minutes over the course of a week, because he would just send one-word answers.
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand why people don't understand the value of connections. Like I'm getting fired up about this again.
No, yeah.
About this to someone else.
It's totally cool.
People think they're someone just because of one little ounce of fame, and it fires me up. I don't know.
Yeah. So we're really aiming at like people that want to create content here. What he just said about like people following him because he liked their comments, that is one of the key things that you hear. Like, especially when I was coming up, I would watch like a lot of like how to like increase your subscriber count. You know how that goes. It's like just those corny videos. And that's one of the things that it all says is like, you have to be really like active in the comments section and like in the community. Cause then people feel like that you like know them. You know what I'm saying? So they're more likely to follow you.
It's so easy to sit down at breakfast, open your phone and reply to some comments.
Yeah.
It kind of bugs me. There are some big creators out there. I never see them like any comment. I never see them reply to anything. And that to me, I don't get. I don't get that. Like TMG is a perfect example. I've never seen them reply to a comment under their videos. Ever.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
It
doesn't make a lot of sense. But yeah, I feel like it's one of the easiest things people can do to build an audience, and people just don't. And I don't know. Yeah.
So we've been having this conversation for a while, but like, if you were to give some advice for not even a producer, but like just somebody that wants to make it in some type of creative industry, what advice would you give them? Just to kind of like summarize what we were just talking about.
Be patient first and foremost. People work hard for a month, don't get anything and give up.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work like that. You have to just be really patient. Gary Vee talked about macro patience, micro speed, meaning on a day-to-day basis, you got to be booked. You got to be working really hard every day, every hour booked out. Like you got to squeeze every drop out of the orange, I think is what he said. Then on a macro level, like year to year, you have to be really patient. You know, I can work really hard today, but on a macro level, how far did that really get me? You know, so just a certain level of patience you have to understand. And then also, I would say people need to understand what they're willing to sacrifice in order to get a reward. You know, too many people are afraid to take a step back in their life in order to take a big leap forward. For example, for me, I knew if I had kept going in college, I'd never do music. It just wouldn't work because I'd be juggling my finance degree. I'd never have time to get better at production, make content or anything. And by the time I got out of college, I wouldn't have enough to start a music career. And so I'd end up getting a job, and then that job takes away time from my music, and eventually it just doesn't happen. And so people need to understand, what to sacrifice in order to take that big leap forward. Like for me, it was quitting college because now I have all the time in the world to just go to my job, make some money to pay bills, and then hit the grind and just focus on that. And so people need to analyze what their long-term goals are with their project, what they want to do, and then what they have to sacrifice to get that. And too many people aren't willing to sacrifice anything, and so they just don't deserve the reward. And it's hard. It's a tough decision, but you have to make it if you want it, you know?
Yeah, so let's actually talk about that. I wanted to talk about it, but I kind of my mind got away from me. So you mentioned a couple of times you dropped out of college. What was that like? What was it like to have to make that decision? And then how did you what went into actually making the decision to drop out?
It's a lot, and it's 90% mental. Because I know I'm going to have to explain to parents, I'm going to have to explain to friends what's happening, and there's going to be a period where no one believes in me. And being able to make that money off of beats, I think really helped. Like being able to tell people that there was money under it now made it sound more realistic to people. But just knowing your parents are going to be skeptical, just knowing the entire world screams at you not to do it, you have to convince yourself that it's the right move. And I think you have to analyze your long-term goals and what you can do short-term. And I guess long-term, I just saw that for the next 4 years, if I put as much effort into music as I would have college, I can get tons out of it. There's just been so many examples of that. And then just sitting through online classes, knowing that I was paying for it and it wasn't something I wanted to do with my life was just painful. My hard-earned dollars that I had earned all through high school was just being dropped on something I hated. And it's just not something I wanted to pursue. And so, I mean, there's so much that goes into it. It's not something I can just explain. Like there was being able to bring myself to actually telling my parents was probably one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life.
Yeah.
But I mean, it paid off because I mean, I'm leaps and bounds ahead of where I thought I'd be by the end of 2020. But yeah, there's a whole host of things that goes into it because you need to plan what you're going to do when you do drop out. For example, there's a difference between dropping out of college and just living in your basement and being a bum and not doing anything versus dropping out and just hitting the grind and working every day really, really hard. And just being able to explain that to people, being able to pitch it to your parents the way you want, without skewing it, I guess. I know I had to be really honest to my parents about what I wanted and then how I was going to be successful at it when most people aren't. Just being able to figure that out. It's very, I'm trying to find the words for it, but it's surreal. It's because, I mean, your whole life you think you're going to go to college. Yeah. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
For 18 years, it was go to high school, go to college. And then I was halting myself saying, wait, no, I'm doing something else. And that's you have to convince yourself that it's the right decision at first before you convince anyone else. And I think that's the hardest part. Because part of convincing yourself is convincing yourself that everyone's reaction doesn't matter. And what goes along with that is not caring what people think. And that's also really, really hard. My friends laugh at me. Not all of them, because I do have some friends that are doing the music thing. But you have to also find a niche of people that get it. You have to find people that relate to it. For example, you, Justin, I can explain this stuff to them because you guys just get it. Yeah. You understand why it happens. But I mean, there have been plenty of times where people's parents have just been like, "Oh, how's school?" And I'm just like, "Great, going good."
Yeah.
And it's just, I honestly think it's definitely the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. But I mean, like I said, you have to take a step back in order to take a big leap forward, and just reminding myself why I'm doing it and what I need to do. It's different for everyone, man.
Yeah. I'm still trying to figure out, because I'm only a senior in high school, so I haven't even graduated. I'm graduating in May, and I'm still trying to figure out, like, am I going to do the college thing? Because I don't know. At this point, I feel like I could do the college thing and also juggle the podcast, but it just takes a lot more work. It like is going to be a nightmare, but I guess it just depends. I need to figure it out, but I know if I'm going to college and like working a job and doing the podcast, it's going to be a nightmare, but hopefully like I can just push through it and figure it out.
Yeah, it's like, it's very hard, especially for me. It's hard for anyone, but I think when I did drop out, I still wasn't in a place where I was confident with what I was producing. And so being able to look at the future and say, in 4 years, I will be, you have to have somewhat of like a futuristic vision, being able to see, even though you're in a bad place now, it can get better with this amount of work. I saw that I'd be further if I had dropped out than if I didn't. And so I don't know, man. It's different for everyone because it matters about living situation. It matters about financial income. And I'm lucky to be in a position where I can do this and live at home with my parents, you know? That's something I forget about, is like just having a lot of gratitude that I can be here and that I'm not getting charged rent that's through the roof, and that, I mean, to an extent, it's technically comfortable living. I don't want to say that I'm comfortable because I'm not, but like, you have to have a level of gratitude if you're going to do it. It's very hard. I've learned to like, you have to pull your weight now that like you're an adult, and you have to prove to people why what you're doing is going to work. It's just, there's a whole host of stuff that goes into it, and it's really hard. But I've kind of numbed out the dark thoughts, so to speak, about my future to the point where it's just tunnel vision towards action, which is really important.
Yeah.
Sometimes, like when I first pitched to my parents, it was just like, what am I doing? Like, what am I about to do? Like, this could be the stupidest thing. But I think one thing that's really helped is just listening to other producers talk about the same thing, and just knowing that they were in the same boat at one point and did it just helps a lot. And just knowing that even by dropping out, I'm already like such a huge step further than most people. And yeah, it's all mental. It's 100% mental.
Yeah, that's what my hat says, guys. Guys, that's what my hat reads. That's what it reads on my hat, if you didn't know.
Oh, I see it.
Yeah, man. Freak, what was I even going to say? It was something really awesome and really grand, and I completely forgot. I got lost. But yeah, that's great, man. I think it was something about college. Oh, no, it was where do you see, so we talked about like 2021, what you're going to put out, but like, let's say 5 years down the road, where do you see yourself at? What do you want to have accomplished? What do you want to have done? Where do you see yourself?
In 5 years, here's the thing. What I've learned with the passing of time is that you set a plan for yourself, and it goes completely a different direction than you thought.
Yeah.
And one thing I learned from specifically that Diamond Pistols podcast was that everyone's path is different. Everyone sees themselves doing one thing in the future, and then something totally different happens, you know? Excuse me. So right now, I guess the big vision is to have a touring business, something where I can travel, live comfortably, but travel all the time, live 100% off of my music and everything that entails between my content, things I sell. But at the same time, I mean, Diamond Pistols doesn't do that. You know, he lives very comfortably in Los Angeles, just jumping in recording sessions with a billion different artists, and just makes a living that way. And that sounds perfectly great to me. So it's right now, I don't know what the 5-year goal is, but I do know that in order to get there, you have to start by putting out music. Yeah. And being there at the skill level. And so I can dream all I want about having a big touring business, about doing all this stuff with my money, but I just might end up doing a totally different path. Mm-hmm. So it's just very hard to say 5 year. I can talk about the end of this year, but like even past that, it's like, I don't know, because something might blow up between now and then. I might start selling beats again. Like, I don't know. So it's very hard to say what my 5-year goals are, you know?
Yeah. Well, that's respectable, man. So we've done about 50 minutes. So do you want to, I think we're going to wrap this up. Do you want to plug all of your stuff that you can?
Every single song I've released.
Every single track.
So I recently dropped 2 remixes. One is a Baby No Money remix. One is an Aries remix. They're for competitions. I always think I'm gonna win a competition, and then I never do. So I mean, I'm kind of numb to the high hopes. However, just based off of the reaction videos that those artists have done to the submissions, I feel like my chances are higher. I don't know. I feel like one of these days I'm going to surprise myself.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's these 2 remixes, but it could be. So I would encourage anyone listening to go take a listen to those. I think they represent where my current skill level is at. And then I have a funky little, I haven't told anyone this yet. I have this, my next track is not EDM. It's not hip hop. It's not house. It's not anything like that.
Whoa.
I'm going back to my lo-fi hip hop days. However, it's not just a lo-fi hip hop track. It's like an instrumental hip hop track. It's got some guitar. It's very funky. It's a collaboration with a friend. The goal is to get it pushed to those radios, and that will be very good.
Yeah.
And then after that, I'm gonna go back into EDM, and hopefully between now and when I release my next EDM song, I'll have a whole bunch of new sounds, a whole bunch of skill that I didn't before, and hopefully that one will be really good as well. But those are 2 releases that are coming up, and then my remixes are where we're out now. So. Yeah, just those.
All right, man.
I've got my podcast.
Oh yeah, talk about
my podcast is coming out hopefully within the next 2 weeks, whenever my mic shows up. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Awesome. All right. Well, I think if I do everything right, his Instagram and everything will be linked in the description. All that stuff will be in the description. Go check him out. This was a fantastic podcast. I appreciate you coming on, man.
Yeah, no problem. I appreciate you having me.
Good stuff. Good stuff. I'm excited to see what you do in the future. I'm excited to see what you and Justin put out.
Thank you.
I'm excited to see what you do with other artists. Everything. I'm stoked, man. I'm here for the ride.
Yeah, of course. For sure.
All right, man.
Just keep watching.
I will, bro. Okay.
All right.
Talk to you later, man.
Sweet.
All right, everybody. That was Kid Brian. What a fantastic show. What a fantastic production. What a fantastic program. Go listen to all his stuff. Go follow his TikTok, his Instagram. It's all linked below. And don't really have much else to say. Go subscribe to the Patreon. You know, we got good stuff over there. Got good stuff coming on the free channel. Good stuff coming on the Patreon. Good stuff coming out everywhere, you know? So go check it out. Go check out the merch, you know? Broc Gardner vs. the World. Something with Teespring. I don't know. Everything's linked in my Instagram. If you guys are struggling finding something, it's in my Instagram bio, the link tree. Everything's there. Merch, podcast, YouTube. Literally everything's there. So don't ever DM me for a link because I'll kick you in the butt, dude. I'll kick you down the road. It's all in my Instagram bio. Go check it out. Thank you for supporting me. Good night.